In the summer of 1590, Governor John White returned to Roanoke Island looking for his family. 3 years earlier, he had sailed away from a fragile English settlement on the coast of what is now North Carolina. He had left behind 89 men, 27 women, and 11 children. Among them was his daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her newborn baby, Virginia. Virginia Dare was the first English child born in the New World. To John White, she was more than a symbol. She was his granddaughter. White had meant to return quickly with supplies. But England was caught in political trouble and the threat of war with Spain. The Spanish Armada in 1588 delayed ships, plans, and supplies. What should have been a short absence stretched into 3 long years. When John White finally returned to Roanoke, he expected to see a struggling English colony, eager for supplies. Instead, he found silence. The settlement was empty. The houses had been taken down. There were no bodies, no clear signs of battle, and no colonists waiting on the shore. The people he had left behind had simply vanished. But they had left one clue. Carved into the wood was the word CROATOAN. It was not random. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island and was connected to the native people who lived in the region. Before White left, the colonists had agreed if they'd moved, they would carve their destination somewhere visible. If they left under attack or in danger, they were supposed to add a cross. White found no cross. That mattered to him. For him, the word may have meant the colonists had gone to CROATOAN Island, perhaps to seek shelter or join people they already knew. He wanted to search for them. He wanted to follow the clue and find Eleanor, Virginia, and the rest of the colony. But the weather turned. A storm was coming and the ship's captain refused to risk the vessel. White was forced to leave Roanoke again. He never returned. That is where history gives us the biggest mystery of all. The Lost Colony of Roanoke became one of America's oldest unanswered questions. Did the colonists die? Did they scatter? Did they join the nearby native communities and survive in a new form? The records don't tell us enough to know for sure. But many were able to see the story in the silence. A story that gives the missing a voice and the silence a shape. In North Carolina legend, the most haunting shape of all belongs to Virginia Dare. In some versions of this story, the colonists learned an attack was coming from a hostile native group. The Croatan people, remembered in the tale as allies, warned the English and helped them escape before the danger arrived. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor Dare carved CROATOAN into a tree, holding baby Virginia close while she marked the only message her father will find. That part of the legend gave later generations a way to imagine the missing colonists as hidden rather than destroyed. According to the tale, some of the survivors lived peacefully among the Croatan people. They adapted to the land. They left behind the failed English fort and became part of the coast that had once seemed so foreign to them. And most importantly, Virginia Dare lived. The baby of Roanoke grew into a breathtaking young woman. Folklore says she was beautiful, but her beauty was not the point of this story. Virginia became a figure caught between worlds. She was English by birth, tied to a vanished colony but raised in a place that no longer belonged to the dreams England had brought across the sea. She was a child that history had lost. But the legend refused to let go. As Virginia grew older, she attracted many suitors. 2 men are central to the tale. One, a nobleman, remembered as severe and devoted. The other was a sorcerer. The sorcerer asked Virginia to marry him. She refused. That refusal wounded him so deeply that his desire turned cruel. He cursed her, and Virginia Dare vanished. In her place, a white doe appeared. Not an ordinary deer slipping unnoticed through the brush, but a pale, mysterious figure seen near the old shores of Roanoke. People said it wandered alone through the trees and along the water, close to the places where the English colony had once stood. Soon, stories spread about the white deer. Some believed it was an omen. Others whispered that it was Virginia herself, trapped in an animal's body, moving through the land where her people had disappeared. The nobleman who had loved Virginia heard the stories and began to understand. The white doe had appeared after Virginia vanished. It moved through the same haunted places. It seemed less like a wild animal and more like a great sorrow that the island had learned to carry. He grew to believe the doe was Virginia, and he believed the curse could be broken. In the legend, he sought help from a shaman, someone who understood powers older than English forts and royal charters. The shaman told him to make an arrowhead from mother of pearl that lined an oyster shell. The arrow was not meant to kill, it was meant to free her. If it struck the white doe, the curse would break and Virginia would return to her human form. But the sorcerer learned of the plan. He could not bear the thought of Virginia being restored to someone else, so he took up his own bow and went after the white deer, not to save her, but to end her. The two men entered the woods around Roanoke, each searching for the same pale shape. One carried the arrow of release, the other carried the arrow of ruin. At the same time they saw her, the white doe stood before them, bright and still, almost unreal in the dim of the light beneath the trees. For a moment, the whole story seemed to pause right there. The lost colony, the carved word, the children who survived, the curse, the hope of undoing it. Then both men raised their bows. Both arrows flew, and both struck the white doe in the heart. The nobleman's arrow broke the spell, but the sorcerer's arrow brought death. For one brief moment, Virginia Dare returned to herself. The curse released her, but the life was already leaving her. The sorcerer fled into the woods, and the nobleman was left with the woman he had tried to save. He carried Virginia back to the abandoned fort at Roanoke, the place where her story had begun. There, according to the legend, he buried her. Not in England, not under a churchyard stone, but in the soil of the island that had taken her colony and kept it a secret. Then, something miraculous happened. From the grave of Virginia Dare, a vine began to grow. A grapevine. Legend says it was from this vine that North Carolina's first wines were made. It is a strange and beautiful ending. The lost child of Roanoke becoming part of the land herself, transformed into root, leaf, and fruit. The legend of Virginia Dare and the white deer is not documented history. It doesn't solve the mystery of the lost colony. It can't tell us exactly where the settlers went or what became of them after John White found CROATOAN carved into wood. But it does tell us something about how people remember. Roanoke left behind an empty settlement and a single clue. That was not enough for us. The story needed a face, and Virginia Dare became that face. The white doe is innocence pursued. She's the memory of a colony that almost survived. She's the child of the people America could not bear to lose completely. Maybe that's why the legend lasted. History says the colony vanished. Folklore says one part of it kept moving through the trees. And somewhere near the old shores of Roanoke, when the light begins to fade and the woods grow quiet, the echoes of a white deer still remind us of America's oldest mystery.